Good morning, everyone. This is True Crime Radar. Welcome back. Today, we're heading once again to Nova Scotia to dive into one of the most heartbreaking mysteries in Canada, the disappearance of 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, two siblings gone without a trace, or so it seems. From the very beginning, this case has been cloaked in confusion. What started as a frantic community search quickly grew into one of the most heavily scrutinized investigations in recent Nova Scotian history. Hundreds of volunteers combed through forests, ditches, rivers, and abandoned structures. The RCMP deployed drones, helicopters, ground units, and K-9 teams. Yet despite the massive scale, not a single confirmed sighting of the children has been made since the morning they were reported missing. Now, months later, new details are forcing investigators and the public to confront a darker, more unsettling possibility. Reports surface that search teams discovered multiple sets of tracks near the Sullivan property. Some appear to be boot prints, others barefoot impressions, and all of them seem to lead away from a house. Were these the children's tracks? Were they left by someone else? Or could they have been overlooked, misread, or even intentionally dismissed in the early chaos? And then there are the dogs. Cadaver dogs, specially trained to detect the faintest trace of human remains, were only recently deployed, long after the case had already gone cold. This decision has sparked outrage. Why were they not used immediately when the trail was fresh? Why wait until months had passed, when decomposition, environmental damage, and contamination might erase the very evidence those dogs were meant to find? It raises a haunting question. Are we witnessing a simple oversight, a failure of coordination, or is there something much bigger happening here? Families, locals, and even independent experts are starting to question whether critical evidence was lost, or worse, ignored from the very beginning. Because when you add together the footprints, the delayed use of dogs, and the silence around what exactly was found during those early days, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just a missing persons case anymore. It's a puzzle made of contradictions, and the truth is trapped somewhere in between. On May 2nd, at exactly 10:01 a.m., their mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, placed a call that would ignite one of the most agonizing searches in Canadian history. She reported that her two young children, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, had vanished from their rural home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. At first, it seemed like a nightmare that would surely end within hours. Maybe they had wandered off into the woods. Maybe they were hiding somewhere nearby. But as the hours stretched into days and now into 5 long months, the reality has only grown colder. No sign, no sound, no trace of Lily's laughter or Jack's small footsteps echoing through the yard. The world has gone silent where 2 lives once brought noise and joy. The only thing resembling a lead came not from police, not from search teams, but from one man's claim, Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather. He told investigators he heard a scream that morning, a scream sharp enough to cut through the stillness of rural Nova Scotia. But here's the problem. No one else reported hearing it. Neighbors, searchers, even Malaya herself. None of them recall a cry for help. Was it real, a figment of memory, or something far more complicated? And then the boot prints, scattered in the dirt and soft ground near the property. These impressions have become one of the most hotly debated pieces of physical evidence in the case. Were they left by rescuers rushing to the scene, by family members in the panic of the first hours, or by someone unknown? Some reports suggest the prints were inconsistent in size, not matching any of the adults present, and certainly not belonging to children as small as Lilly and Jack. To this day, investigators have never released a clear explanation of what those prints mean, or they were even properly documented before being trampled and lost. This is the moment where the story fractures. On one side, you have a missing children's case with no concrete evidence. On the other, you have whispers of overlooked tracks, disputed screams, and the possibility that something was missed or buried on that very first day. And once the foundation of a case cracks, every detail that follows begins to feel uncertain. According to RCMP court documents, investigators made a discovery that shifted the tone of the entire case. Near a natural gas pipeline, not far from the Sullivan property, they documented children's boot prints in the soft earth. At first glance, this seemed like the breakthrough everyone had been praying for. Investigators quickly analyzed the tread and determined it matched the exact brand and size of boots that Malaya, the children's mother, had recently purchased for Lilly. That detail alone was enough to launch a massive, resource-heavy search along the pipeline, with officers, helicopters, and volunteers focusing heavily on that corridor. For a moment, there was hope. Maybe the trail had finally been found. But here's where the story takes a darker, stranger turn. Daniel Martel, Lilly and Jack's stepfather, later revealed something unsettling after reviewing search photos. He claimed that what he saw didn't align with the official narrative. According to Daniel, there weren't just 2 sets of prints, but 3. 2 clearly made by boots. And the third? Barefoot. Think about that for a moment. A barefoot child's prints among the tracks of children in boots. The question that immediately follows is chilling. Who was the barefoot child? Could it have been Lilly or Jack, one of them pulling off their boots to shake out stones, as children often do when shoes feel uncomfortable? It's possible. But if so, why would one child continue barefoot along a rugged pipeline route where gravel, sticks, and sharp debris would make every step painful? Another possibility, one even more disturbing, is that the barefoot prints belong to a child entirely unaccounted for, someone who was never reported missing, someone whose presence raises more questions than answers. And this is where the early hours of the search come back to haunt the investigation. Before the RCMP had time to secure the area, dozens of volunteers, friends, neighbors, and even parents with their own children flooded the scene. While their intentions were good, their presence created chaos. Tracks were stepped over, impressions blurred, and potential evidence was compromised. What could have been the single most important lead now sits under a cloud of uncertainty. Because in the end, those prints, 2 in boots, 1 barefoot, don't just tell a story. They raise doubt. Doubt about what really happened that morning. Doubt about whether the investigation missed its most critical clue. And doubt that may never be fully resolved. Now, let's talk about the dogs. Last Friday, the RCMP finally confirmed what families, locals, and true crime followers have been demanding for months. Cadaver dogs were brought in from British Columbia to conduct specialized searches on the Sullivan property and in the surrounding terrain near the natural gas pipeline. These aren't ordinary police dogs. They're highly trained to detect the chemical compounds released during human decomposition, capable of picking up faint traces even after long stretches of time. Their arrival signaled a new phase of the investigation, one that quietly acknowledged the possibility everyone hoped would never be true. But here's the haunting question. Why did it take 5 months? Cadaver dogs are powerful tools, but they are not miracle workers. Their effectiveness depends heavily on timing. Since weakened with exposure to rain, wind, and heat, soil shifts, vegetation grows, wildlife disturbs the environment. By the time these dogs set foot in Nova Scotia, months had already passed. If Lilly and Jack had walked away, or if their bodies had been moved from the area in those crucial early hours, then this last resort deployment may already be too late. Even more troubling is the revelation about the dogs originally deployed back in May. They weren't scent-specific trackers. They weren't bloodhounds given a shoe, sock, or blanket belonging to Lilly or Jack to follow a unique odor signature. Instead, they were general service dogs, air scent trained rather than ground tracking. That distinction matters. Air scent dogs are skilled at detecting the presence of human scent in the air, but they don't follow individual trails on the ground, which means when those dogs indicated a direction of travel, there was no confirmation it belonged to the missing children at all. It could have been anyone, neighbors, searchers, or family members. And that's the heart of the frustration. If this were the United States or the United Kingdom, where scent-specific resources are prioritized, highly trained dogs would have been brought in immediately. The trail could have been followed while it was fresh, evidence preserved while it still mattered. But here in Canada, those resources weren't there. Bureaucracy, logistics, and limited availability delayed what should have been the first step of the investigation. Now, the one tangible clue we did have, the boot prints near the pipeline, has grown colder with each passing day. And while cadaver dogs sweep the ground months later, the silence in Nova Scotia grows heavier, carrying with the fear that the truth may already be lost time. So here we are, 5 months later, standing at the crossroads of questions that should have been answered long ago, 3 sets of prints, 2 in boots, 1 barefoot, etched into soft ground near a gas pipeline, now blurred by time and weather. Cadaver dogs sweeping fields and woodlets as a last hope, long after the trail has gone cold. And a family still waiting, still pleading, still staring into a silence that grows heavier with each passing day. Did Lilly and Jack really walk that pipeline? Were those tiny boot prints theirs, marking a desperate journey across rough terrain? Or were they following someone else, lured, led, or forced into woods? Then there's the barefoot track, the most haunting detail of all. Was it one of the Sullivan children, stumbling shoeless along a path no 6-year-old or 4-year-old could endure for long? Or was it someone else entirely? A third presence, never reported missing, never explained? The questions only multiply when you rewind to those first critical hours. Did something happen before police even arrived, in that narrow window when the children were first reported missing? Was evidence overlooked in the chaos, as volunteers and neighbors rushed in with good intentions but left behind a landscape of contamination? And perhaps the most chilling possibility of all, were Lilly and Jack taken far from Lansdowne Station, whisked away in a vehicle before investigators ever had a chance to close the perimeter? What makes this case so frustrating is not just a lack of answers, but the knowledge that some of these questions should have been addressed early on. Scent-specific tracking dogs could have locked onto Lilly or Jack's trail in those first hours. Boot prints could have been photographed, cast, preserved before being trampled. The pipeline area could have been locked down immediately before it became muddy by dozens of extra footprints. Instead, critical time slipped away, and with it, the clarity that might have revealed what happened on May 2nd. Now, all that remains is silence. A silence that echoes in the Sullivan family's home, where 2 children's voices are missing. A silence that lingers in a community once united in hope, now weighed down by doubt. And a silence that forces us to ask, was this truly an unsolvable mystery? Or was the truth lost because it was never properly searched for in the first place? What do you think? Were those 3 sets of tracks, 2 booted, 1 barefoot, just an innocent detail lost in the chaos of the first search? Could they be explained away as children playing, or neighbors' kids accidentally leaving their mark in the mud? Or do they point to something far darker, something investigators haven't uncovered, or perhaps haven't revealed? Because here's the reality. When details don't add up, when official reports leave gaps, the imagination fills them with possibilities. And in this case, every possibility is unsettling. Maybe Lilly and Jack really did wander off their tiny boots, carrying them further than anyone expected. But if that's true, why did the trail vanish so abruptly? Maybe the barefoot prints belonged to one of them. But if so, why did no other trace appear along that path? And if the barefoot prints didn't belong to Lilly or Jack, then whose were they? That single question alone can turn this case from a tragic disappearance into something much more sinister. And then there's the timing of the search. The dogs brought in too late. The prints left unprotected. The possibility that key evidence was lost forever in those frantic early hours. If mistakes were made, then it isn't just nature or circumstance we're up against. It's human error, or worse, human neglect. So I'll leave it to you. Do these tracks tell a simple story that investigators failed to piece together? Or are they fragments of a far more complex puzzle, one that stretches beyond the pipeline and deep into something no one has been willing to confront? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you make of this one. Do you see a straightforward explanation, or are we staring at the first cracks in a much darker truth? And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because trust me, this story is far from over. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and keep asking the hard questions. This is True Crime Radar, signing off.